This is EPCOT Center. EPCOT Center at Walt Disney World in Florida.
Opening in 1982, EPCOT both highlighted technology that would enhance different fields of human life and displayed the cultures of different communities around the world through the World Showcase. Opening with 9 countries and expanding into Norway and Morocco later, each has extreme detail to best represent the people that live there and the lifestyle that they have created. But not all of these pavilions can be equally fleshed out. I have ranked each of the World Showcase countries based on their attention to detail, the attractions, the characters, the food and drink, and the shopping, restrooms, and crowd levels. The following video is completely based on my own opinion, and you may or may not agree with it. But here is my list of the EPCOT World Showcase pavilions from worst to best. Oh, Canada. As one of the main entrances to the World Showcase and possibly the first country someone has seen, it is just okay. There honestly just isn't really anything to do in the Canada Pavilion. There is one attraction, which is Canada Far and Wide, a completely mediocre movie. There is one restaurant, Le Cellier Steakhouse, which serves pretty good food but very expensive for a vacation. With only one merchandise store, no characters to meet, and no restrooms, the only thing I can really stop in Canada for is their maple popcorn cart. Though I will say I love the waterfall in the back of the pavilion, but mostly Canada is just a large area with nothing to do except climb 3 different staircases. Some people may disagree with placing Morocco so low on this list, but again, this is my video and you will just have to deal with it. Morocco only slightly has more to do than Canada. Here you can at least meet Princess Jasmine, though you also used to be able to meet Aladdin with her. They do have a gallery that I have looked at once in my life, and a band that I personally have never seen. The food is pretty good if you're more of an adventurous eater. The restroom is probably one of my favorite in the World Showcase, though it can be a little busy at times. The best part about the Morocco Pavilion is by far the architecture. The King of Morocco sent out Moroccan artists to help authentically create the pavilion, which I think is such a cool fact. The shopping used to be really good here, but since the pandemic, most shops have yet to reopen, and there is only one pretty small store at the beginning of the pavilion. This is honestly where the ranking gets a little difficult for me. Italy has some of the best food in the World Showcase. My family always has to eat at Via Napoli every trip because the pizzas there are so delicious. And honestly, cantaloupe on a pizza, I thought it was going to be really weird and really bad, but it was really good. But there isn't much more than that for me in the pavilion. Yeah, Sergio, this mime, is fun to watch, but I wouldn't go out of my way to make sure I saw him perform. The shops aren't very exciting, especially since a large portion of the shops consists of expensive perfumes and masks. I do really enjoy the gelato stand in Italy, but it's not my favorite place to get ice cream in the park. There are also no characters here and no restrooms, so normally Italy is a pretty quick stop for me. I honestly debated putting America even this high on the list. Because how necessary is it for us to have an American pavilion when the entire park is in America? It doesn't make sense to me. But I will admit there are some things I really like about the America Pavilion. If I'm looking for something quick to eat that isn't one of the many festival booths, I'll probably stop at Regal Eagle Smokehouse, which is such a cute Muppets-themed restaurant with honestly really good barbecue, and I can never say no to some good garlic bread. America also has the benefit of having the concert stage, which at night gives America a huge boost in things to do. And personally, I also really love seeing the Voices of Liberty perform, probably just because I was a theater kid in high school, but if I'm in the area around when they're performing, I always make sure to grab myself a spot. The shopping is really lackluster, but again, if you want American souvenirs, just go to the nearest gas station and you'll be okay. For the longest time, when people would ask which was my favorite pavilion, I would say it was a tie, and the United Kingdom was one of them. I truly just had a fixation on the actual country for a while, so I thought the EPCOT pavilion was the coolest thing. However, now I'm realizing that there just isn't much to do here. I like how you can meet both Alice and Mary Poppins, but they haven't brought back the Winnie the Pooh meet and greet, which is very disappointing to me. And the shopping is probably some of my favorite in the World Showcase, to be honest. The restrooms here can get pretty busy since they are the first ones in the World Showcase if you're entering from Canada. I personally don't really care for the food since I don't eat fish, but my friends that do love the fish and chip stand, so that definitely gives UK huge points. I also do like the band performances there, but they're usually very loud, and I'll only stop for maybe one song before moving on. Again, probably a little controversial putting Norway so low on this list, because there can be a lot of things to do in this pavilion if you want to spend most of your day waiting in lines. Yes, there's Frozen Ever After, but it is one of the longest waits in the park. You can meet Anna and Elsa, but they're usually also a pretty long line too. And honestly, I'm a strong believer that Frozen shouldn't even really be in Norway since it isn't a Norwegian story and it's not set in Scandinavia at all, but its setting is completely fictional. I do love Akershus's character dining though. It has always been one of my favorite character meals. Growing up, I loved all the princesses, so being able to meet so many of them in such a small space was so cool for me. But it is a really hard reservation to get. Norway does have one thing going for it, though, in my opinion, and that is the Viking coffee. As a big coffee drinker and someone who doesn't really enjoy the taste of alcohol, it was always a go-to drink for me when I was in the park. The one shop that Norway has is decently big, however, a large portion of it is dedicated to Frozen, and the rest of the merchandise has Norway splattered all over it, so it's really for a very niche crowd. As someone whose family is very German, I do have a special attachment to this pavilion, even though there isn't a lot to do. There is a character to meet, Snow White, and I love that you meet her next to a wishing well, though I think it would be really fun if she was in her wishing well outfit too. I'm also a really big fan of Karmelkush and could probably eat every single item that they have in there and still want more. The shops in the pavilion are probably my favorite in the World Showcase. I think they are so cute and have such fun and unique items, and I always find myself walking through these stores. I also really like the giant soft pretzel that they have, as well as the bratwurst. I have eaten in Beer Garden once, and the food was really good, though at the time they were seating different families at the same table, and as someone who comes from a very introverted family, we definitely did not enjoy that. But it was a really fun and cool atmosphere with the band playing songs on the stage, and it was a good time. China is another really solid World Showcase pavilion. I'm honestly blown away by the architecture every single time that I see it, and I think it is so detail-oriented. There isn't a whole lot to do in this pavilion, mainly only reflections of China, but I personally love looking at the Shanghai Disney exhibit that they have. I think that park is so fun and different from Walt Disney World, and I would love to visit it someday. I also really love the House of Good Fortune shop. The items you find in there are so different than anything you find throughout the rest of the World Showcase. I have honestly bought so many dresses from there and jewelry, and I love looking at the little statue figures that they have and the plants. It is all just very cool, and I wish I could buy the entire store. The Joy of Tea stand does get very busy though, as a lot of people are fans of bubble tea, and I think the two restaurants that China has aren't worth getting excited over. They're basically just your standard fast food Chinese places, which you can find anywhere. Japan is one of the countries that I always have to stop in when I go to the World Showcase. However, I couldn't put it in first or second no matter how much I may have wanted to. For me, one of the only things Japan has going for it is the Mitsukoshi department store. As someone who grew up playing video games and now watches some anime, I love everything about this store. I also love the traditional Japanese items that they have and the fact that an entire section of the store is dedicated to Japanese snacks and drinks. However, I don't really do anything else in Japan apart from going to that store. They do have a display, but when I've seen it once, I don't really need to see it again. I think the food is pretty good, though one of the restaurants is basically just Benihana, so it's not really worth such a large chunk out of your park day. Japan was always my go-to spot if I needed somewhere quiet to rest because the garden area always has seating available because nobody goes up there, and it's so calm and relaxing. I do enjoy watching the Matsuriza drummers, but again, it's nothing I'll go out of my way to see. I love everything about the Mexico Pavilion, and it was really hard deciding whether it was first or second. I think the architecture is amazing, both inside and outside of the pyramid. I love that you can meet Donald Duck wearing a sombrero. I'm a huge fan of Mexican food, so I love that there are 3 different Mexican restaurants, and that isn't even counting the 2 different bars and the usual festival booth. I think Grand Fiesta Tour is a fun attraction, and since it almost never has a wait, I always ride it. The marketplace area is one of my favorite places to go shopping, and the atmosphere inside of the pyramid is so cool and fun. A big downside to Mexico is that it is always very crowded. On busy days, there can be an actual wait just to get inside of the pyramid, and the walkways outside are always super crowded since it is the start of the World Showcase. However, I think everything else about the pavilion outweighs how busy it can be at times because it is truly one of the best pavilions. If you have been following, it should not come as a surprise that France is my number 1 pick. With the recent expansion of the pavilion, it is very popular with guests, but it is for a good reason. The food in France is incredible, from the crepes to the bakery items from Les Halles that I almost always get for breakfast, to l'artisan de glace, which I always stop at to get ice cream inside of a brioche bun. It is so good. I love all the small shops throughout the pavilion. I love that you can meet both Belle and Aurora, and I even once saw Gaston meeting where Belle usually is. I love that the theater plays 2 different shows, the Beauty and the Beast sing-along and Impressions de France. I love the display items inside of the theater before you go in of the different musicals and operas. I think Remy's Ratatouille Adventure is a really cute ride, though I also don't really think you should wait in a super long line for it. Overall, I think France is just such a cute pavilion, and I genuinely believe that I could spend an entire day in this pavilion. So, what do you think? Was my ranking accurate? Was your favorite pavilion at the bottom of my list? Let me know. EPCOT's World Showcase has always been my favorite park of Walt Disney World, and I am excited to see what changes they may make to it in the future. Perhaps we'll get another country. Maybe they will go through with the UK expansion that was announced 4 years ago. It's very possible that this ranking list will be completely different in another 10 years, and I cannot wait to see if it is.